Welcome to Made for Mondays, the source for digging a little deeper into the Believers Church Sunday messages and finding ways to apply them to our daily lives. Together, let's take a deeper look and find a way to bring Mondays back to life.
Hello, everyone. I'm so glad you're here on the Made for Mondays podcast.
There you go.
Hi, RaChelle. I'm RaChelle. I'll be your host today.
Hi, RaChelle.
Hi, and who do I have here with me?
It's me, Jamey.
Hey,
Jenifer. And I'm Robin Orr.
So Robin is one of our elders and has been for a very long time.
The eldest elder.
He's the eldest elder.
Yeah.
Yes.
And with the most seniority.
Right. And
Both.
so it doesn't count talking to me as a senior.
No.
Okay.
You fall into the kid
Thank you.
category
Thank
today.
you. I appreciate that.
Yes, you're welcome.
Yes,
Yep.
yay. Yeah, and also Robin is an amazing champion for one of our local partners, Oasis Social Ministry. So, yeah, we'll talk a little bit about that too.
And you also lead a B
Today.
group?
Yeah, I do lead a B group.
Wow. Like you just checking all the boxes.
Well, I do, and I'm on the tech team too. So,
There you go.
yeah.
That's awesome. Well, I'm glad to have you on the pod today.
Yay! So, I'd love to hear what you guys did this weekend.
So I want to start with Robin can talk about it, but on Thursday. Thursday's my Friday, right? Because
Yeah,
I'm off
yeah.
on Friday, sort of. So Robin took me to a shooting range, and it was so much fun. I haven't been in quite some time, and I shot a
Flintlock.
powder. What is it called? Black powder.
Black powder, yeah. It was a flintlock rifle. So, we got you introduced to the art of muzzle loading.
Yeah, muzzle loading. I've never done that
Muzzle
before.
loading.
Yeah.
That sounds
Yeah.
colonial.
Sort of like that. And so Robin would do this thing where I'm trying to figure out how to get it loaded and stuff, and he'd say, "There's a bear coming," and I would be done. It took way too long.
Yeah. It was like, well, it was this test to see whether or not you could reload it quick enough to actually get a second shot at the bear. And
Yeah.
Jamey was toast.
I was definitely toast. Yes.
Oh, man. Is this a big hobby of yours, Robin?
I've done it for years. It's
Yeah.
just kind of one of my hobbies, right? So one of the things I do, and
Yeah,
the
very
spare
cool.
time, right?
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Did that take you out, or did you have more for the rest of the
Oh
weekend?
no, we went and had brunch with my daughter on Saturday at Blue Pete's restaurant.
Blue Pete.
Down near Pungo. I've never been there before. The food was decent. Service was a little slow, but they had a lot going on.
Yeah.
But it looked like it would be a fun spot for dinner. And they have a place where people arrive on their boats and dock up and stuff. That's kind of cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that was my Saturday, and
Very
then
fun.
Sunday was Sunday.
Sunday. Sunday
Yeah.
was Sunday. Very cool.
Nice.
How about you guys?
So I went away for the weekend for a little bit with our care team. So our B group care team, which is basically a group of people who have decided they're going to care for our leaders like Robin and others. And so it was really cool because we've been meeting consistently every month for a while now. And this was our first time that we actually got to do a planning retreat together. So for me, I've been able to plan with a person here and there, but to have a whole team to plan with and discuss what next year is going to look like and
It
goals.
makes it more fun, doesn't it?
Oh, it was so much more fun.
Yeah.
And it will probably be so much better.
Yeah.
We'll probably see a huge difference
That's
this year.
awesome.
Just because of different perspectives and stuff like that. It was really, really good.
Oh, that's so
Yeah.
good.
I'm so glad y'all had that time.
Yes, it was great.
How about you?
So we had some family time. So we went out and saw the fireworks on Saturday night.
Oh.
Took the sailboat out there.
Yeah, I saw the
grabbed
pictures.
my son and daughter-in-law, my grandson, and took them out there in the middle of the night. It was exciting. It was fun.
That's very cool.
Not like the
Yeah.
time that you and I went that one time. You remember that,
I
right?
do remember that, yes.
What happened? I feel like there's a story.
There is a story. Yeah.
Go ahead.
Yeah, we went down to Harbor Fest to see the fireworks, and we got on the Portsmouth seawall, and there was this huge storm that came, and we just got totally soaked. By the time we got back to the car, we were all dripping wet.
And then my sunroof also leaked terribly.
Yeah.
So we were wet in the car too.
Yeah.
So that was great.
Yes.
Yeah. But we didn't have that experience.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah, it
I'm
was all
glad.
good. Yeah.
So was that for Harbor Fest too,
Yes.
for fireworks?
Yeah, it
So
was
they
Harbor
canceled
Fest.
the fireworks, or?
No, I think they started the
Rescheduled
fireworks.
it.
Maybe I can't remember
And
exactly.
they rescheduled them for another day.
Oh, did they reschedule? Okay.
Bummer.
Yeah.
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 So wet and no fireworks.
Yeah. Wet and no fireworks.
Yeah.
Oh man, very cool.
Yeah. How about you?
So, me? Well, so Friday we kicked off the weekend. I talked about this a little bit yesterday. Doing a big send off for my niece going to her formal dance. So we all went to my sister's house and took pictures and did the whole paparazzi thing, and that was really fun. And then we went, while they were at the dance, we all went to Union Taco, and it was amazing. They had really cool plant-based options, but it was like really delicious grilled veggies and stuff like
Nice.
that, which I have a high appreciation for.
Where is that? Where is that Union Taco?
You know the new
Is it down Norfolk towards?
Greenbrier.
Oh, it's Greenbrier.
There is another Union Taco, I think, in Norfolk.
Okay.
This one was the Greenbrier one in that new area that has built up so
By
much.
Dollar Tree over that way?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Which is, I was a Great Bridge girl, so we hung out over there a
Okay.
lot, and that place is almost unrecognizable.
really.
Yeah. And then we spent a lot of time in pools this weekend. We got to hang out in a lot
Nice.
of swimming pools, and that was incredible.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's good.
So it was a really fun weekend.
This was the weekend for it. It was hot.
It was, yeah. It was very hot, but nice and refreshing being
Yeah.
in the water. And I'm a fish, and I'm trying to turn my kids into fishes. So,
Nice.
yeah, it's working.
Good.
Yeah. So we have, again, Robin here with us, who is our champion for a local partner, Oasis Social Ministry. We just love partnering with them. We have for many years. So we just wanted to do a partner highlight. I was working on a jingle for this, you guys.
Oh, I would love to
wanna
hear
hear
it.
This
that.
is what I got so far,
Okay.
okay? Would be Outreach Partner Highlight.
Oh, I love it. That's really good.
Even though she said spotlight, but
Uh,
the word was spotlight.
yeah, highlight works. Yeah.
Yeah.
That was really good.
Yeah, so I want to be a jingle writer. Anyways, I would love for you to tell us, Robin, just a little bit about some of the things we celebrate that Oasis does for our community, and then also some of the needs that we can help
Sure.
with as
Yeah.
a church.
Yeah. And how long do I have? Do I have an hour, 2 hours? How long?
According
got
to
it.
Jeremy, it's got to be less than an hour and a half.
An
Yeah,
hour and
less
a
than an
half.
hour and a
Okay. So yeah, I've been working at Oasis now for, I guess, 4 or 5 years. I can't remember. It's been a long time.
Yes.
Yeah.
But Oasis is kind of neat because it is food pantry for the local Portsmouth community, and it provides a lot of help to people that are having problems as far as food needs. And so, that whole aspect of it is very, very neat to do.
Yeah.
And it also serves lunches and breakfasts to people that are homeless and in need of food. So, it's a great outreach to the Portsmouth community, and it serves a real, important need in there. As far as, needs and stuff like that, there's always need for basic necessities. So food is an important thing. And then actually one of the things that we found in the food pantry is we run out of hygiene items. So, things like soap, toilet paper, toothpaste, toothbrushes, people can't buy that with the SNAP program. So they come in there and they're really looking for stuff like that. So donations in the hygiene area are really appreciated. And they can always use, food items. Specifically, we need a lot of canned fruits. We run out of those very quickly, and that just seems to be something that's not donated. So, items like that are great.
Yeah.
And, of course, financially, they need help too. Yep.
Yes.
Yep.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, and when you give at Believers, you do help
Right.
support that also. And I'm guessing there's probably room for volunteering also.
There are some room for volunteering, definitely in the need of the food pantry, which is on Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. We can always use help down there, and that's from 10 to 12.
Okay.
And then you can get plugged in to helping out on lunches and breakfasts. But you need a little lead time on that to get in there. So we do have some strong groups that are helping out on that area right now. Yeah.
Yeah, so if you're interested in helping with any of that kind of stuff, contact RaChelle,
Yes.
and she can get you connected with the right people.
Yeah, happy to do that.
Yeah.
And thank you so much for all that you do to serve. And you're always being a great voice for our church there and getting people plugged in. So
Yeah.
awesome.
Yeah, because when RaChelle's not writing jingles, she's our outreach director.
Yeah.
Exactly. I wear many hats.
Yeah.
So we've been in a Bible reading plan this year. And this week we were reading through Matthew 24 and 25. So do you guys have any takeaways from the reading thus
So
far?
I did do my reading this morning. Last week I didn't before the pod. So, but Matthew 24 is Jesus talks about the end of time. And that passage is one of the passages. There's more than one, but it's one of the passages that caused me to start rethinking my end of the world theology and move from thinking that the church is going to get raptured out before the tribulation to thinking that the church may actually just go through it. So I am not dogmatic on that position. I say that I lean post-trib, but that passage is one of the passages that kind of shifted my thinking on that because the disciples ask, what is the sign of your coming? And if you just follow what Jesus says, a lot of terrible things happen to a lot of people who follow Jesus.
Yeah.
And he doesn't shy away from talking about it. So anyway, that's it took me back to those days that I was trying to form my thoughts around all of that stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love that. I took a note, talk to Jamey more about this.
Yeah, that's one of those that I probably am not. I'm probably not doing a whole sermon on that one. Yeah, I don't think.
Oh man, I love that. And anything else stick out for you guys?
That was,
So far?
I mean, it was a long reading.
It's a long
Yes.
reading.
A long
today.
reading, but
Yeah.
at the end, I think that the thing that stuck out to me is Matthew 25:45, where it says, when you refuse to help the least of these, you refuse to help me. And he's just talking about at the end of time too, where he's separating the sheep and the goats and the believers and non-believers. And he just talks about how like, you didn't help me when I was hungry and thirsty. And their question was like, well, when were you hungry and thirsty? And then he goes into, like, when you refuse to help the least of these, you refuse to help me. And it just reminded me of the statement that you made, the way you love the person you love the least is the way you love God the most. And I thought, wow, that kind of really tied right in with that.
Yeah. Yeah. Awesome.
It was a long read.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's always scary for me when you read it because it does describe the end times. But I really like what Jenifer was talking about, that ending there where, Christ reaffirms the whole fact that, helping the least is helping him. And we don't know it, when we're doing it. That's what really always strikes me. And then there's the flip side to that, too, in that section.
Yeah.
Really good.
One of the things that stuck out to me was just that fear factor that we can take on when addressing the end times and when addressing the unknown, and how I feel like even in the middle of all of the scary stuff, there's this piece where Jesus is like, but I mean, you're not even going to know, so it's fine. It's fine. Chill out. And I think that leaning on him and allows us to tackle those really tough unknown situations in life. And also he gave some wisdom, but there are some things that you will know, which I think is a good segue into what we're going to be really digging in today, is this whole phase of life when we are facing parents that are aging. And it can be the season that can have a lot of frightful, unknown things and dynamics in it. But then there are some things, and we got some really practical information on things we can do to plan for it, to get through it, to process it. Yeah. So, Jamey, we're going to start off, you opened up the message with going over the state of aging in America and the effects it's having on us today as a society and how that's playing out in all of our families. So could you just give us a little more overview about that picture that you painted yesterday?
Yes, I mean, just the gist of it is, like most countries in the West, we're getting older, and if it weren't for immigrants in our country, the acceleration would happen even quicker. So yeah, we're an aging society, and it's going to have all kinds of impacts on us economically. Talked about Social Security a little bit and how unsustainable that is, and then just the tension that it creates for families. And as parents live longer, the season of care also grows longer, and so. It just creates some tension, and in our survey that we did, there are quite a few families in our church that are kind of in the middle of it or anticipating being in it, and it can feel pretty overwhelming. And that's why we have the panel that we have. Robin's done all of that, and he'll talk to some of that in a bit. And Jen is kind of in all of that, and Bonnie and I have done and are in still some of that too. So
yeah. So you shared that you and Bonita, the beautiful Bonnie, you guys have been in that season you've been in that long thing. So you're not speaking from just observation,
right? You've
been heavily in it. And depending on your family dynamic, whoever's going through it, it isn't a necessity that it's like a one and done thing necessarily.
Right.
So this endurance factor, I'd just love to hear some of your thoughts around that. Like, how do you?
Yeah. So I mean, for us, it started when Bonnie's mom started dealing with long-term illness and immobility, and that was back probably 2015-ish is probably when that started, and her mom passed in 2017, and then my mom in 19, and then my dad in 20, and now her dad is still kicking and going, and but still struggling with some health stuff, and we're just trying to find the best solutions for the situation, his living situation that he's in right now, and it's very complicated.
Yes. Yeah. I'd love to hear kind of where you guys are on your journey with aging parents.
Sure. So, my journey, as Jamey mentioned, we're looking in past history, so to speak, on that. But my dad passed in 2004. My mom passed in 2010, and then Jane's mom passed in 2016, and her dad passed in 2019. But so that gives you just, that time frame itself is 15 years, but it actually started multiple years before that, many years before that. And we actually started seeing a decline in their health. And so, it was a long period of time. And, even after they passed, you're dealing with things for years afterwards, too. So, it was extended.
Wow.
Yeah.
And you also had the complicating factor of your mom and dad being on the West Coast.
Right. So I was dealing with caring for them, remotely, which was hard, and I didn't have any siblings on the West Coast. So my sister was actually in Boston at the time. And it just made it really hard to do that. But on the other side, Jane's parents were local, so
this is off script a little bit, but that makes me think of what it's like to go through this with siblings. And are your siblings followers of Jesus? Like, is that a common value you shared as you were caring for your parents?
So, I mean, I don't want to drag us down here very, very far in this, but my dad and my mom were in their latter half of their life, very strong believers. Yeah. My mom was a speaker at the Christian Women's Association. I think that's the right term, throughout Southern California. So she was a speaker there, and my dad was very actively involved in the Gideons. My sister's a believer, so yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Cool. Thank you for sharing that off script question. And Jen?
Yeah, so I saw Mike walk through it first with his dad, and so that was hard, and it was hard for me as a spouse to see my husband walk through that in times where, he wanted to be close because we were far as well, and he wanted to be close and he wanted to be there, but circumstances don't always allow for that to happen, and so I watched him walk through that, and then about 3 years ago, we were having a family reunion where we were all getting together, and it was the first time in a long time that my sister and my parents and everybody was going to go. And it was on that trip where we noticed something very significant happening with my dad. And it was a little bit alarming because, like, my mom was saying little things, like he was driving somewhere and he was getting lost and, that type of thing. But then to see it, in person and watch that happen was a little alarming. And then shortly after that, we found out that he has dementia. And so in this short amount of time, we've really seen him decline very quickly.
Yeah. Wow. Thank you guys for sharing kind of where you are in your journey. I'm going to have more questions about that specifically in a minute. But first, Jamey, in your message, you pointed us to an encounter that Jesus had with some religious leaders. They were giving him a hard time, as they often did. Yeah. When were they not? About his disciples not following some Jewish traditions. So how does his response to them tie into this topic of aging parents?
Yeah, it sort of does indirectly. So, the whole point of the passage is Jesus is kind of calling out people for elevating traditions to being equal in authority with Scripture, but also how people were using religious traditions to diminish the value or the honoring of people. And Jesus is always about people. And so if your religion is marginalizing people that you're supposed to be honoring, that's a problem. And so Jesus kind of uses their question to him about their traditions and why he and his disciples were not observing them to come at them with the commandment from the 10 Commandments of honoring your parents. And so indirectly, it turns into this passage about honoring your mom and your dad. And he specifically says that they had a custom, a tradition that would allow them to not financially support their parents by dedicating some of their resources to God. And Jesus said, that doesn't work.
Yeah.
Like you can't dishonor your parents by pretending that you're honoring God. By doing that, you're actually dishonoring God by dishonoring your parents.
Yeah.
So that was kind of how we got into it.
Yeah. Wow. So one of the things I love that came out in Jen's story too is that the tradition of today is such that we aren't really integrating our elderly community into our community. It's sort of kind of like putting them over here. Yep. And I loved that when they were having family reunions, like you don't hear that as much anymore. Right. Even being intentional about being together is a different tradition that allows us to keep our family around and to be honoring and notice when things are happening. And we need to make adjustments for this new season that our parents may be in. So speaking of ways that we honor them, the big idea was we cannot honor God without honoring our parents.
Yeah.
That was a big habit we went to carry. You said Jesus knew it would be easier to say that you love God than it would be to actually love people, and it is easier. So way easier. Way easier.
Yeah, right.
Yes.
Well, it's way easier to say it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's like a phrase I hear. They say, "People gonna people."
Oh, I like that.
Because people are gonna people.
Yeah.
it's easy to be like, oh, I can do this with you, God. So we are advocates of vulnerability around here, right?
Yep.
I like to get around juicy. Thank you guys for being vulnerable with us today, by the way, BTW. So how have you experienced the reality of that statement when it comes to caring for y'all's aging parents? I just said y'all's.
Y'all.
You did.
It
I
happens.
know. I started doing that too.
Yeah, so vulnerability as it relates to that.
Vulnerability.
Yeah, so I'll just jump in. You know, my mom lived with us for a pretty long time, and you know, even though she was with us, that Bonnie handled it so well, but it did create some tension, and there were times where, you know, I would just kind of go in avoidance mode for a day or two, just because I kind of had my fill, and there were times where, you know, that was not very honoring. You know, like I look back and I even though I think I did everything I could do, it's almost like parenting. You look back at the mistakes that you made parenting, and you're like, oh man, I could have done that part better. And I definitely feel that way about the time that my mom was with us. That we did the best we could, and we did a lot, but there were a lot of things that I look back on and feel like I could have sat with her more. I could have listened to her stories more. I could have, you know, played another game of Scrabble. I could have done these things that would have meant so much to her. And sometimes I didn't honor her with time.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's just one of those, you know, regret pieces that I kind of carry.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
that's very vulnerable.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think it's when Jamey first asked me if I would be on, I think because I'm in the midst of it, I was hesitant even to do that. I think there's always, like with mine, it's with my story, it's a little different in the fact that the way that my dad grew up was very much about his family, but there was a lot of, because of his dad's family, there was a lot of protection around that. And so to the point where as a little child, he couldn't go out and play with the neighbors because that was unsafe, and his family was the only people he could trust. And so he grew up with that mindset, and that kind of like carried over to even my mom, who it's his wife, but it's not blood, right? And so growing up, I would see a little bit of that, and with the dementia, it kind of not accelerates, but it kind of
Intensifies.
intensifies, like that kind of thing. So in this process, through that, it's been a little bit difficult to see that. Who my mom. I just love her. She's given up so much in so many different ways for so many different people in her life. And so when you would see that and trying to decipher, is this the, you know, disease or what's going on? It was hard, very hard for me at first to be honoring and stuff. And I'm always loving to my dad, and I love my dad. But in situations like that, it's hard. And I think that a lot of people have to go through that. I've heard both stories, like they can be super sweet, or they can, get a little bit more aggressive and stuff. And that's hard. And it's hard to try to figure out, when is it safe? And there's been times where we've had to pull mom out of the situation, and he misses her then. And then you feel bad for him because he's lonely. And it's just a really tough situation to be in. But I found myself really struggling with just some forgiveness and wanting to be there to help. And I have a sister and a brother-in-law who are there, and they are amazing, and they have small kids. And here I am, they are in Georgia and I'm in Virginia, and I've made several trips out there, but but wanting to also be there for them. But even in little small situations, like this last one, my mom went to Korea to be with her mom, who's 90, and it's probably going to be the last time she gets to see her too. And so even that was a struggle for her because she didn't want to leave Dad. So we knew that we had to show up, and my sister and her family for sure have done the majority of it. Yeah. And she doesn't ask for help very much, but when she does, you know, like, you got to be there. And so this was one of the case. She called and she said, you know, Mom's gone for this amount of time. This is a really busy season for us and our family. Is there any way, I have 2 other sisters besides her, that you guys can come? And smack in the middle of that season was when we were at Drive. And I had actually planned an all-inclusive with some friends directly after. And I just wrestled with that because I was like, well, maybe I can find another time to go. And I was like, no, this is the best time to go. It's in the middle. So I canceled that and went to be with him. And then even in that discussion, she was like, well, you can stay here because there is a lot of stuff that is going on. Some of it, you know, with dementia and stuff. And she's like, you know, you can stay here and then go there during the day. And so even that I wrestled with. And at the end of the day, I was like, no, like, I don't know how much time I'm going to have left with him. So I'm going to be with him. And that time, some people were asking me about it afterwards. It was probably the most and best time I've ever had with him. There were some funny moments in there and all the things, but it was, I think it was healing for me, and it was just good just to be there with him and just to have that time. It was just him and I.
Yeah.
And so I know, like, and you had addressed, Jamey, that it's not just cut and dry easy. There's a lot of dynamics, and everybody's family is different, what they're going through. But the fact of just going to God and asking, like, how can I honor my parents the best way that I can? And for me, it's easy to say, oh, I'll honor my mom by going because she can't be there and I'll step in. But man, I would have missed out if I just had that mindset on honoring my dad and having that special time that I did with him as well.
Yeah, it's good.
Yeah. So good.
It's a hard subject.
Yeah.
So I'm not really sure to begin, but on this one, so as Jamey mentioned, you know, I had 2 different situations with my parents. They were remote, and you know, how to honor somebody remotely is tough. And so Jane and I had asked them years ago, and when I say years ago, it was obviously years ago, to move back here to be near us. And they've just both loved California. Our house was like a half mile from the beach. So it was, you know, the California dream, so to speak, in North County, San Diego. So wonderful beaches. They loved the beaches, and they loved going down there and swimming in the ocean and doing that. But, you know, over the years, we saw them declining, and my mom actually died of Alzheimer's, and Jane's mom actually died of Alzheimer's, so we went through that twice. You know, things with my mom kind of progressed, and my dad became really the primary caregiver for her, you know, and I would go out there to help as I could, but obviously I'm working, and my sister was working, and so that was very, very difficult to do that, you know, keep track and see where they were. Just that whole decline and seeing that was hard. So, honoring your parents that way is really a tough thing to do. But for me, it was, you know, keeping in touch with them and actually going out there and visiting them as I could. I have a funny story, so I'm going to tell that because I need to tell a funny story right now. So my parents loved to camp, and they had an RV, and they had this, it wasn't a monster RV, but it was a pretty good-sized RV. And we finally had convinced them, or I thought we had convinced them to sell it. So I flew out there and fixed the RV so it would run again. And I thought, okay, great. This is going to get sold, and I won't have to worry about this situation. Well, I flew back to Virginia, and 2 weeks later, they took off to the desert, driving this RV. Yeah. And the next thing we hear is this RV broke down on the grapevine, which I know that's not a phrase in Virginia, but in California, that's actually going down into San Bernardino County, and it's a real steep decline. And the engine had blown up while my dad was driving it at night, and they had to have it towed back.
Oh, no.
Never went back out there and fixed it again. That was it. So when my dad passed, I had to dispose of that RV that was sitting in the front. Oh, well. But, that was hard. For Jane's parents, they were local, so we helped out quite a bit. We were over there every week, basically, and multiple times, and helped out with getting them some in-home care, and taking care of the homestead.
Yeah. The homestead.
Yeah.
Wow. I see a common thread I see in all of your stories that you shared was this tension between, like, it's almost like our parents teach us to be autonomous, like to have our own lives. And then we switch back into this thing where we've got so much going and so much on our plates. And then how do we, navigate the tension that I now have to care for them and I want to do the things, but I have to do this thing. And I think that's just a very real vulnerability that y'all shared with us. And that is so helpful. I just want to commend you and thank each and every one of you because it has made such an impact on my life already and where I am in dealing with it. So my parents walked through divorce recently, and one of the things it did was give freedom for me to process what was happening with my parents, because I was like, okay, these are all people I love and respect, and they're dealing with stuff with their parents and it is affecting them, and that's okay for it to affect me too, because when you walk through that, that divorce, you're already starting to have conversations now where I'm worrying about things about my parents that I just didn't think I would have to worry about until they were that age, how they're doing emotionally, their loneliness, all of that sort of stuff. And then also we're having those conversations now where we're talking about what happens in trust, because we're brought into that sooner because there's not a spouse there to do that for them, that they're just leaving all the things to the spouse. So then we're having to plan for what that looks like. And I was just so inspired by you guys, I'm just learning Robin's story, but by Jamey's story and Jen's story, to say, like, it's okay and I can make plans and choices that will allow me and my siblings to be in a better position when we reach that phase of life, and even be in a better position now as we're navigating, like, okay, what's happening? How do we do this? So thank you so much. It is very helpful to our community that you're vulnerable in that way. So you hit on this a little bit, some of the practical ways that you showed up for your family bi-coastal. So before we dig into some more of that, Jamey, you addressed this big elephant in the room yesterday, and I want to make sure that it's addressed here too. There are many listeners who have very broken, difficult relationships with their parents. So what does honoring your parents look like under these circumstances?
Yeah, so that was the part of the message that I just spent some time talking through, the whole forgiveness piece. And I do think it is a way you can't honor your parents if you're harboring resentments towards them. And so I think, a starting point for many people is just going to be working through, how do I forgive? I had a conversation with someone yesterday who, the toxicity of the relationship that they have with that parent is, it's overwhelming. And so, like, I'm not glibly just saying, forgive. It's a real tough road for someone who's been subjected to, emotional abuse or physical abuse, that kind of stuff. It's a difficult thing. And yet, as a follower of Jesus, that is the path that we've been called to walk. And it's hard to get around it. Like I said yesterday, it's like it is the cornerstone of our faith in Jesus, this idea of forgiveness. And so, yeah, to honor your parents, for many, that's just going to be the thing, and it's going to take some time to work through that. And I put a resource in the notes yesterday, and I'll just mention it again, just because, man, it was a masterclass on forgiveness. And if you go to becomenew.com and then click on library, you'll see all the different series of talks that John Ortberg has done. And one of them is on the journey to forgiveness with Everett Worthington. He interviews him for the first half a dozen or so episodes of that, based on that book that I recommended yesterday also. And it's amazingly good. I could watch it 5 times and learn something every single time I watch it. And it will most likely be the foundation to what we do on a series on that for next year, because it was just so rich.
Yeah. Wow.
So yeah, that's a thing.
Yeah.
That everyone, you can honor your parents by starting there.
Yeah, I love that. Forgiveness. This portion of the message reminded me of the Noah story in Genesis 9, where he's like plants the vineyard and then he's wasted and naked. And some of the kids, like, they see him and then they turn away. So it's like this interesting story about like, even if your parents are maybe not making the best choice in this moment, how do you still...
You can honor them.
Them, like, cover them up, look away.
Right.
Yeah, I kept thinking about that
That's
story.
an interesting parallel.
Interesting.
I never would have made that connection, but it's not a bad one. Yeah, it's pretty good.
I don't know. That story has always been really intriguing to me, because I was like, wait a minute, Noah did the thing,
Right?
But they're getting in trouble and cursed.
Yeah.
But it's different as a follower of Jesus.
Old Testament can be pretty difficult to navigate. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh man. All right. So help as you can and as you are able. Those are the practical ideas that we talked about. Spending time with them. So what are some of the other ways that we can be intentional about honoring our parents?
Well, I wanted, if I can, speak on the topic of loneliness, because I think a lot of this population, it fits that directly.
For sure.
I was in a discovery experience class, and there was this lady, she's in her 70s, and I happened to sit at the table with her, and it was just so cool to see her interact with the people around her at the table. And there was such wisdom in what she said. And so much so that I was like, I need to have coffee with her at some point. And so I did. And what was interesting, while I'm sitting down having a cup of coffee with her, and I'm just like, I just want her to speak to me. Because just even that short interaction I had, I could tell, like, she has so much wisdom. And as she was talking, she was just saying how she doesn't know what her place is. She doesn't feel like she has a place. And I'm sitting here going, are you kidding me? Like, how many people, even the people at your table, the words you spoke so much into their life. And so she had me in tears at the end of the conversation, just as we would go back and forth. But it just reminded me that sometimes, because maybe of our society, or we're all so busy, maybe we don't even notice. So maybe it's unintentional, that they can sometimes get overlooked. And we need to be reminded that, man, they have so much to give us. And so I'm even thinking, like, how can I do this within B groups where, we can capitalize on it, because she had such wisdom in those things. I came across it's a Florida State University College of Medicine did a study in 2018. And it said that loneliness was associated with a 40% increase in the risk of dementia, even when controlling for external and genetic factors. And that really hit me. Like, we need to really look at that, not even just in our family, but in our communities, and how we can support and come alongside, because it benefits them and it benefits us so much too. And even as I think about my dad's story and how he grew up, that makes sense. It fits because of what was drilled in him. There was a little bit of paranoia of getting close to anybody else, and so he distanced himself, and he felt that loneliness, and now we are where we are, and it's just really opened my eyes to some things, and just makes me want to look at that. How can we bring this valuable group of people into our lives daily?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I had a conversation with someone yesterday who has kids that live locally and grandkids, and he said to me, he was vulnerable enough to say, we kind of feel that, our kids are so busy with their kids that they're just not spending much time with us. And fortunately for them, they're physically able to go to where their grandkids are active, and so they are able to take the initiative to be engaged with their family. But if they did not take that initiative, their thought is they would just be overlooked, and it creates that feeling of loneliness. So I think it's way more prevalent than I think we realize, and we can be so intentional of inviting them into our groups, inviting them onto our teams. There is so much to offer, and so often it's sidelined just because of our, like I mentioned yesterday, we worship at the idol of youthfulness, and it's unfortunate because we're missing out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love the challenge you gave us to implement that practical way to show up for our aging folks is to spend that time with them. And if they're not in your life, then find ones that are.
Someone,
because they're around.
They are. They're in our church and they're in our community.
Yes.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. One of the things I definitely want to do more, but one of the things I've been doing in the last year is I can be rushing everywhere. I'm a mom of toddlers, so getting out the house is a miracle. And I don't know how I get anywhere on time, rarely. But when I am at the store, I try and slow down if I run into someone who is aging, and I'm like, this is so cool. Like, this is a moment where I can sit, because 9 times out of 10, they're wanting to chat about this food or the boys. They love the boys so much. And so I try and say, you know what? I'm not going to rush through this. I'm going to have this moment and meet this member of my community and let us be in each other's spaces. And it has been so great for me, for the boys, hopefully for them. Hopefully we're not boring them to death. But just tiny little things that we can do to push more of that time. My grandpa happens, he's in Louisiana, so I don't get to spend that time. I would, the elderly folks in my family, we sit when we're together, but I don't get to do it all the time. And I feel like that's something that would really enrich me and my kids' lives to have more of. Yeah. So before we wrap up today, are there any other resources that specifically helped you through the time that you are in or went through as you had aging parents?
I'm going to make a pitch here, and Jamey's touched on this, on some of the financial things, but if you can encourage your parents to have legal documents in place, that will really, really help you. My parents had a trust, and then we actually pushed Jane's parents into getting a trust. And so sitting down, sitting with your parents and talking about that ahead of time, especially, if they end up with Alzheimer's and dementia, if they have some medical directives, power of attorney, a will, a trust, that can really help things. So I'm going to tell you, and I don't want to take too much time on this, but
fine.
When my dad passed in 2004, I had started my second job. And so I didn't have a lot of time. He passed on December 4th. I had to fly out to California and close out the house. My mom had Alzheimer's, so I had to find a facility for her and do the funeral and sell vehicles, sell the house. And luckily, they had established a trust and ahead of time, and I had flown out there before, and my name was on all the bank accounts. So that enabled me to, use the checkbook and, execute all that. And so between December 4th and about December 23rd, I was able to do the funeral, get the house on the market, get rid of that RV, sell the other car, close the house out, pack the house up, and move everything from California to Virginia.
Wow.
My sister was not really able to help me at that time. She was on a sabbatical in Greece, and so it was just really a blessing that they did that. And the other thing that actually Heather touched on was building that parent-adult relationship of friendship that enabled that trust so that they felt confident and comfortable in allowing me to be on those bank accounts and, naming me the trustee. So anyway, I think what I'm trying to say is, have a talk with your parents and, see where that is, because everybody's situation is different. But, just knowing some of those things and, how to deal with it will help, especially in those situations where, it's you're not there, it's remote.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Such a good word from Robin on that. And it's so practical because, it just applies pretty much across the board. And it all starts with being able to have the conversation. And people are hesitant to have that conversation because it feels awkward. You're talking about when their life is going to be over and what's going to happen after that. So that makes it very difficult to have that kind of conversation. I had that conversation with my mom, and it was while I was checking her in for a surgery that she was having, and they often will ask at the medical facilities, do you have medical directives, end-of-life care kind of stuff, those questions. And we said no, and they said, would you like some papers on it? And I said yes. And so we went over and sat down, and I thought to myself, this is the perfect moment to just bring it up with Mom, because here she is facing surgery. We just had someone ask us, and so I just said to her, Mom, what do you think about after you're recovered from this, we go talk to an attorney and get this stuff planned out? And she said, I think that would be a really good idea. And so we did. We went to a senior law attorney in town. We went to Timothy Palmer. I can highly recommend him. But there are plenty of senior attorneys in our community, and got all of her stuff squared away. And it made it so much easier when she passed to have had those conversations. And some of them were difficult because of some of our family dynamics and things like that. If she had not done that, it would have made what happened after she passed incredibly complicated. And so I was looking at a website for senior resources when I was prepping for this message, and they had this thing on there that was called the 40-70 rule, which I thought was just a good rule to put out there. And the idea was, if you turn 40 or if your parents have turned 70, that's your cue to have these kinds of conversations. So don't let it go past that. Robin's giggling because he's at the 70 mark, and now his kids are going to have that conversation.
And they are.
So,
and we've actually had that somewhat.
So that's awesome. But that 40-70 rule is not a bad one. Like, if you just if you're afraid to have the conversation when you hit 40, just have it. Like, it's just worth doing.
Yeah. And we have the first 40 this year. My sister, happy birthday tomorrow. But and then neither of my parents are 70, but we've already had those conversations. And one of the things that has helped when there was friction when we started to have it was something you say all the time, where it was just that idea of, we spend so much money and investment and time on things that might happen, and we're not planning for what we know will happen. And they're like, okay, you're right. We should talk about it. We should have these conversations.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
So good word.
Yeah. Any other last advice?
I would say community.
Yeah.
I know that when I first started going through this, what I found was helpful is I would share a little piece of it, and then I would find other people who have walked through it. And it was just great just to be able to sit down with them and hear like advice like that, or or even how to deal with things, or like even just the sympathy and the empathy,
Yeah.
you know, that they can provide because they've walked through it. And so I would say that both on the side of, you know, the child watching an aging parent, but also for the aging parent, like that's really hard too,
Yeah.
when you think about it.
Yeah.
You've been independent for so long, and now
Yeah.
you have to rely on other people. And so even in that scenario, like community is so vitally important.
Yeah, wonderful. Thank you guys so much for sharing all this wisdom with us today. That's all the time that we have for. So this week, Sunday, we're going to be wrapping up our family issues series, which I have just loved this series.
It's been good.
So much. Yeah, it's been so great. And we're going to have a special Q&R panel.
Correct.
I want to say Q&A. So
We don't give answers. We give
we give
responses.
responses.
Yeah.
Q&R panel, and we would love to hear your questions. So, and respond to your questions. You can send those in to questions@believerschurch.org. That's questions@believerschurch.org. And it's going to be a big day. It's also Father's Day.
It is.
In case any of you forgot.
Yeah.
Make some plans.
Right.
It's Father's Day, and it's going to be the Hager's last Sunday.
It is.
I don't want to talk about.
Yep.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yep.
So, yeah, it's going to be a big day. Make plans to be here. Invite someone else to join you. And we would love for you to be here 9, 10:45, identical services. You can pick which one. And if you can't make it, you can always check us out on YouTube at 1 p.m. Thank you guys so much for being here. Let's go be love.